little one. Join us.
In the deepest silence of midnight, in a desolate wilderness far from the reach of civilization, or perhaps on an ancient battlefield, where the air still feels thick with the echoes of violent struggle, you might find yourself walking alone. The world around you is swallowed by a darkness, so profound that the boundary between the earth and the sky begins to dissolve, leaving you suspended in a void of cold air and heavy stillness. As you move through the shadows, a sound begins to emerge from the void. It is not the rustle of the wind or the cry of a nocturnal bird, but a rhythmic, crystalline clattering, like the sound of hard, dry objects, striking one another with relentless precision. Gachi-gachi-gachi. The noise vibrates through the very marrow of your bones, a grating, unpleasant resonance that defies the natural order of the night. You turn, searching for the source, but the landscape is empty, save for the twisted silhouettes of dead trees and the jagged outlines of rocks. Yet the sound grows louder, transforming from a distant annoyance into a piercing, invasive cacophony that seems to echo inside your own skull. You look up, and there, rising above the horizon, like a monument to eternal despair, you see it. It is a presence far deeper and more terrifying than the darkness itself, a colossal skeletal figure that pierces the heavens. This is the Gashadokuro. This spectral entity is no mere ghost or fleeting apparition, born of a tired mind. It is a physical manifestation of an unfathomable weight of human suffering, a crystallization of the resentment and unfulfilled desires of thousands who perished without a name, without a home, and without a prayer. They were the soldiers who fell in the mud of a forgotten war, listening to the cheers of an enemy they could no longer see. They were the peasants who succumbed to the agonizing slow crawl of famine, their stomachs empty and their hearts filled with the bitter realization that the world had forgotten them. When these bodies are left to rot in the open air, unburied and unmourned, their flesh returns to the earth, but their bones retain a singular burning purpose, the lingering attachment to the world of the living, and a ferocious anger toward the society that abandoned them act like a spiritual magnet. Bone by bone, the remnants of the dead are drawn together in the dead of night, knitting themselves into a singular gargantuan, will that seeks only to share its agony with the living. This towering giant, standing 15 meters tall, or more, is a testament to the fact that when collective grief is left unaddressed, it does not simply vanish. It coalesces into a force that can shake the very foundations of reality. Tonight we shall descend into the abyss of this sorrowful monster, exploring its origins, its terrifying nature, and the grim fate that awaits those who cross its path. Do you ever find yourself wondering about the ground beneath your feet? Have you heard rumors that your neighborhood was once the site of a bloody skirmish, a forgotten execution ground, or a mass grave from a time of plague? If you have such stories or local legends that keep you awake at night, please share them in the comments below. The seeds of a Gashadokuro may be closer than you think, resting just beneath the thin veneer of our modern lives. The origins of the Gashadokuro are deeply intertwined with the turbulent history of the Heian period, specifically the legendary rebellion of Taira no Masakado, after Masakado was defeated and his head was displayed in the capital. As a warning to all rebels, his daughter, Princess Takayasha, was left behind in the ruins of his ambition. Consumed by a desire to avenge her father and restore the honor of her clan, she retreated to the ancient palace of Soma. There, it is said, she mastered the dark arts of sorcery, communing with vengeful spirits to summon a gargantuan skeleton to strike terror into the hearts of the imperial army. This image was immortalized by the ukiyo-e master Utagawa Kuniyoshi in his famous print, Takayasha, The Witch and the Skeleton Spectre. In this masterpiece, the giant skeleton is depicted, tearing through the bamboo blinds of the palace, its massive phalanges gripping the wooden beams as it looms over the terrified warriors below. This visual representation cemented the Gashadokuro in the Japanese consciousness as a singular titanic entity, but the deeper folklore suggests its nature is far more complex and terrifying. In truth, the Gashadokuro is the ultimate expression of collective trauma. It is the sum of thousands of individual tragedies, an amalgamation of the nameless dead, who were denied the dignity of a final rest. During the Sengoku period, the age of warring states, battlefields were often littered with the remains of the defeated, left to be picked, cleaned by scavengers and bleached white by the sun. Similarly, during the great famines of the Edo period, the roadsides were lined with those who had collapsed from exhaustion and hunger, their final moments spent in a state of utter isolation. While their physical forms decayed, the energy of their resentment, their onryo, seeped into the very soil. From a scientific or psychological perspective, we might call this the weight of history or the lingering trauma of a society. However, in the realm of the supernatural, this energy is a literal building force. Each small bone, fueled by a spark of fury, seeks out its neighbors, interlocking and building upon one another until a massive skeletal frame is achieved. This is not a creature of biology, but a creature of pure emotion given physical form, a monument of bone that walks the earth when the sun retreats, and the world is reclaimed by the shadows. The true horror of this entity lies in the paradoxical nature of its movements. Despite its immense size, which should by all rights cause the earth to tremble and the trees to shatter, the Gashadokuro moves with a supernatural predatory silence. It glides through the mist and the midnight air, like a wandering cloud, invisible to the eyes until it is far too late to run. The only warning a victim receives is that peculiar, high-pitched ringing in the ears, accompanied by the dry clicking of teeth and joints. Some researchers of the occult suggest that this sound is actually a form of spiritual interference, a frequency emitted by the mass of negative energy that disrupts the human nervous system. When that gachi-gachi sound begins to echo in the center of your mind, it means the giant has already marked you. It means that the hundreds of thousands of individual bones that make up its body are vibrating in anticipation of a new soul to join their ranks. Once the Gashadokuro finds a solitary traveler, it reaches down with a hand the size of a small house, its fingers cold and hard as stone, wrap around the victim with a strength that defies escape. In those final moments, as you are hoisted high above the ground, you are forced to look into the vast, empty caverns of its eye sockets. Within those hollows, there is no light, only a swirling vortex of the memories of the dead. You see the faces of 1,000 starving children, the final gasps of dying soldiers, and the tearful eyes of mothers who could not protect their families. The Gashadokuro does not just kill, it consumes the life force of the living, as a desperate, futile attempt to reclaim the warmth it was denied. It bites off the heads of its victims to drink the fresh vitality contained within, or it crushes them in its massive grip, allowing the blood to flow over its ancient, porous bones. To the Gashadokuro, every living human is an affront, a reminder of the tomorrow they never had, the meals they never ate, and the love they were forced to leave behind. Their anger is not logical, it is elemental. It is the scream of the forgotten given a voice that can crush the living. If you ever find yourself walking late at night and notice a sudden, inexplicable silence, followed by a metallic clicking sound that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, what would you do? Would you run blindly into the dark? Or would you freeze in the hope that you haven't been seen? Have any of you ever felt a presence so large it seemed to swallow the horizon, or heard a sound that didn't belong to the world of the living? Please share your survival strategies or your closest encounters in the comments, so that we might all learn how to navigate the dangers of the night. Every single bone that constitutes the body of a Gashadokuro carries the distinct, indelible imprint of its former owner's final moments. If one were to examine a single rib or a fragment of a skull from this titan, they might find the psychic echo of a father who gave his last morsel of food to his child before fading away in the dark. They might feel the agonizing longing of a young conscript who died in a muddy trench, clutching a lucky charm from a sweetheart he would never see again. They might hear the silent sob of an elderly woman who passed away alone in a cold hut, her existence erased by the indifference of a passing era. These individual threads of despair are woven together into a tapestry of absolute nihilism. Because of this, the Gashadokuro possesses no singular personality, no capacity for reason or mercy. It is a hive mind of hatred, a storm of sorrow that knows only the impulse to destroy. It is a fascinating detail of the legend that the Gashadokuro is strictly a creature of the night. The light of the sun, the source of life and clarity, acts as a solvent for the dark energy that holds the skeleton together. When the first rays of dawn touch the horizon, the spiritual bond between the bones is severed, and the giant collapses into a harmless pile of ancient remains, hidden among the tall grass or beneath the forest floor. But as soon as the sun dips below the edge of the world and the veil between the realms grows thin, the call begins again. The bones twitch, they slide across the earth, and they find their places once more. This cycle of destruction and reconstruction is said to continue for as long as the underlying cause of their resentment remains unaddressed. As long as there are those who die unmourned, and as long as the living choose to forget the tragedies of the past, the Gashadokuro will continue its nightly vigil, a terrifying reminder that the past is never truly buried. In our modern age, many believe that the time of monsters and spirits has passed, replaced by the glow of streetlights and the constant connection of the digital world. But is the Gashadokuro truly a thing of the past? Beneath the layers of concrete and steel that define our cities, the bones of history still rest. During urban expansion projects, it is not uncommon for workers to uncover massive pits of human remains, the forgotten victims of forgotten conflicts. If these remains are disturbed without the proper rites, if they are simply moved aside to make way for a new shopping mall or office tower, who is to say that the resentment does not find a new way to manifest? There are modern urban legends of office workers staying late in skyscrapers, only to see a massive white face staring back at them from outside a window 40 stories up. There are stories of drivers on lonely highways who hear a clattering sound that drowns out their engines, followed by a sudden shadow that eclipses their headlights. Perhaps the Gashadokuro has adapted to our world, hiding in the vertical shadows of the city or the dark spaces of our tunnels. Furthermore, in a society where social isolation is on the rise and many pass away alone in small apartments, their bodies undiscovered for weeks or months, a new kind of collective sorrow is being generated. This modern loneliness, this quiet desperation of the overlooked, may be the fuel for a new kind of spectral entity. Instead of a creature of the battlefield, we might be facing a Gashadokuro of the concrete jungle, a ghost of the abandoned and the unheard. Some online forums have reported strange digital recordings from abandoned buildings where, instead of voices, there is only the sound of thousands of tiny clicks, like a keyboard being struck by 100 hands, or bones rattling against a floor. Could this be the way the dead now communicate their presence? Using the frequencies of our technology to remind us that they are still here, and they are still angry. Protecting oneself from a Gashadokuro is an almost impossible task. Traditional wisdom suggests that carrying powerful talismans blessed by a high priest or chanting sacred sutras like the heart sutra may provide a temporary shield of spiritual energy. However, against a force comprised of thousands of souls, a simple prayer may not be enough. The only true way to banish such a creature is to address the source of its pain. These spirits do not want just blood, they want to be acknowledged. They want the world to know they existed, that they suffered, and that their lives had meaning. There is an old tale of a monk who encountered a Gashadokuro and, instead of fleeing in terror, sat down and began to recite the names of all those who had fallen in that region, offering a sincere prayer for each one. As he spoke, the giant skeleton began to weep, its massive frame trembling not with rage, but with a profound sense of relief. One by one, the bones detached and fell to the earth, finally finding the peace they had sought for centuries. But in our fast-paced material world, do we have the spiritual strength to face such an entity with compassion? If a 15-meter-tall skeleton stood before you, smelling of ancient dust and the metallic tang of old blood, would you be able to stand your ground and offer a prayer? Or would your mind break under the weight of its collective despair? We often think of monsters as something to be defeated, but the Gashadokuro is a monster that needs to be healed. It is a reflection of our own failure as a society to care for one another. What do you think is the most powerful protection against the darkness? Is it a physical object, a religious belief, or perhaps something internal, like the strength of one's own will? If you have a personal talisman or a phrase that gives you courage when things go bump in the night, please share it with us. We may all need it sooner than we think. Looking at the Gashadokuro through the lens of folklore and sociology, we see that it is a profound expression of social anxiety. In the Edo period, the constant threat of starvation and the arbitrary cruelty of the ruling class meant that life was fragile and often meaningless in the eyes of the powerful. The Gashadokuro represented a way for the common people to visualize the collective power of the oppressed. It sent a message that even if you are small and weak in life, in death, your anger can join with others to become something that even the greatest samurai or daimyo cannot ignore. It is a dark, ironic form of solidarity, a union of the broken. In this sense, the monster is a mirror of the society that created it, a physical manifestation of the hidden tensions and unvoiced grievances of an entire era. When we study these legends, we are not just looking at scary stories to tell in the dark. We are looking at the emotional history of a people. We are hearing the echoes of those who were silenced by time and circumstance. The Gashadokuro asks us to look at the parts of our history and our current world that we would rather ignore. It asks us to remember the victims of war, the casualties of economic collapse, and the forgotten souls in our own neighborhoods. The bone-clicking sound is not just a threat, it is a call to conscience. It is a reminder that the dead do not go away just because we stop looking at them. They remain in the soil, in the shadows, and in the very air we breathe, waiting for us to acknowledge the debt we owe to those who came before us. As we conclude our journey into the depths of the Gashadokuro legend, consider the weight of the stories you have heard tonight. We live in a world that prizes the new, the bright, and the fast, but the Gashadokuro is a creature of the old, the dark, and the slow. It is a reminder that some things cannot be rushed, and some wounds take centuries to heal. Tonight, if you find yourself in a quiet place, listen closely to the sounds around you. Is that truly just the settling of the house or the wind in the eaves? If you hear a rhythmic clicking, if the air suddenly turns cold, and if you feel a gaze from a height that no human could reach, remember the stories of the nameless dead. Do not look out the window. Do not seek the source of the sound. Instead, offer a silent thought for those who have no one left to remember them. It might be the only thing that keeps the giant at bay. We hope you found this exploration of the Gashadokuro both terrifying and thought-provoking. This sorrowful monster, born from the battlefields and famines of the past, continues to haunt our imagination for a reason. Behind its monstrous form lies a profound human truth about the power of memory and the consequences of neglect. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the abyss of Japanese folklore, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. Your support allows us to continue bringing these legends to life and exploring the mysteries that linger in the shadows of our world. If you have your own encounters with the unexplained or requests for future monsters you would like us to cover, please leave a comment below. We value your insights and your stories, as they help us build a community that respects and remembers the mysteries of the past. Be careful in the darkness tonight, and always be aware of what might be looming just behind you. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.